Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching In Depth with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. Over the next 25 minutes or so, we'll try and bring you up to date and try and make you understand what vote on account budget is. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley will be presenting the sixth budget of the present NDA government on the 1st of February 2019 as an interim budget ahead in an election year. It will include a vote on account. But what exactly is a vote on account and how is it different from the interim budget? Let's find out in this report. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is presenting the interim budget on the 1st of February. According to him, a vote on account or approval for government's estimates of expenditure for first 4 months of the next financial year 2019-20 will be presented along with it. A vote on account is typically presented in an election year. It is essentially a way to seek Parliament's approval to incur expenditure for a limited period of time, which is 4 months before the country has general elections this year. The vote on account is different from an interim budget. Interim budget is presented when a government is going through a transition period and a new government is expected to be voted into office. The new government presents a full year budget after assuming office and it makes a fresh set of announcements for the economy.
So the budget is basically the government's expenditure and receipts. But the way the government raises the revenue and the outlays it makes on specific sectors, this actually has a bearing on the outcome. So expenditure and receipts, they also show the government's policy orientation and have an effect on the economy. So it's not just how much money the government raises, but how it is raised. And it's not just how much money the government spends, but it's also on what it's spent.
For Finance Minister Jaitley, this will be the sixth budget. When the Modi government came to power in 2014, 2 budgets were presented that year. P. Chidambaram, as Finance Minister in the previous UPA government, presented an interim budget in February 2014 due to the elections being around the corner. When the Modi government came to power in May 2014, Jaitley went to present a full budget in July. The normal practice is that if the budget falls just a few months before the elections, then an interim budget is presented, leaving the full budget to the new government. The Finance Ministry has already asked all the departments to review the requirement of funds for expenditure during April-July 2019. It has called for the information to be furnished by the 10th of January 2019. The Ministry has also reiterated that in the vote on account period, no expenditure on new service or scheme can be incurred until the demands for the entire year have been voted and the related appropriation bill is passed, authorizing expenditure for the entire year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. And let's move on now. Budgets presented during the NDA government era have tried to break from many traditions set by previous regimes, from abolishing the Planning Commission to advancing the presentation of the Union budget by a month. Let's find out how the NDA budgets have been different.
The NDA government has so far presented 5 budgets, and in quite a few ways, these budgets have together marked a significant break from some prominent budgetary traditions that were practiced by pre-NDA governments. Experts point out that the entire revenue and expenditure management has been sought to be made a round-the-year process and not a one-off exercise focused on the budget. The second aspect has been the merger of the railway budget into the general budget 2 years ago. Budget day itself has been advanced by a month, which enables spending to start from the start of the fiscal year on 1st April itself.
The one other constraint the government had when it came to power was that our banking sector was already in a mess, and the banks were no longer in a position to lend substantially to industry. And so private investment came down sharply, and that has remained low. It is only in the current fiscal that we have seen an uptick in what the economists call gross capital formation. As a proportion of GDP, this had remained stuck below around 29%, whereas it had been well above 30%, reaching as high as 35% in the previous government's time. So this has been a major constraint on this government, which meant that all investment activity had to be essentially driven by public spending, and that the government has tried to do by focusing on roads and railways, mostly roads.
The introduction of the GST regime from July 2017 has further meant that revenue proposals involving most indirect taxes have been removed from the budget. They are now decided by the GST Council. Most importantly, the very process of budget making has been changed with the abolition of the Planning Commission. This has meant that the NDA era budgets have abandoned the old outlay categorization of plan and non-plan expenditure. It's now all about revenue and capital.
When this government came to power, the global environment was of poor growth. So this adversely affected our ability to export. So our exports have been declining, except in this current fiscal. That has really hurt us. But at the same time, this poor global growth has helped to push down oil prices. And India, since India imports 80% of its oil requirements, this was a big bonanza for the government because our oil bill came down. So that helped us macroeconomic and macroeconomic things. Our import bills came down, and the government's subsidy on petroleum products came down, and we managed to fully decontrol diesel prices, and both petrol and diesel ceased to bear any government subsidy.
The government has also relied on mechanisms outside the budgetary process to make some big ticket announcements. These include the Jan Dhan Yojana that was implemented by public sector banks, the Aadhaar targeted delivery of financial and other subsidies, Benefits and Services Act 2016 Act makes the direct benefit transfers possible. Subsidies on liquefied petroleum gas or LPG were cut by exhorting people through campaigns led by Prime Minister like Give It Up, against some that was kept out of the budgetary process. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the Indian economy has been described as the brightest spot in the global economy under the present NDA regime. As far back as 2015, the International Monetary Fund Chief Christine Lagarde stated that among emerging economies, India is the only country that has demonstrated growth. More details in this report. Under the NDA government, the Indian economy has been described as the brightest spot in the global economy. As far back as 2015, International Monetary Fund Chief Christine Lagarde stated that among emerging economies, India is the only country that has demonstrated growth. Successive budgets have tried to ensure that India maintains that position. The gross domestic product rate was 4.7% in the last fiscal year of the Manmohan Singh government. 1 year later, under the Narendra Modi government, the GDP growth rate soared over 7%. The focus on maintaining the growth trajectory is evident through successive budgets. In 2019, Central Statistics Office data suggests that India's GDP is estimated to grow at 7.2% in the fiscal year 2018-19, as against a growth rate of 6.7% in the previous financial year. Another huge positive for the government has been its performance on rising prices. CPI inflation for May 2014 was around 8.5%. In November 2018, annual consumer inflation declined to 2.33% from an upwardly revised 3.38% in October and below market expectations of 2.8%. The current account deficit, which was a problem during the UPA rule, has been kept below 1% of the gross domestic product.
Government has been known for taxation reforms. Demonetization was a huge initiative, and the follow-up exercise after demonetization, like capping cash transactions, having PAN card on certain transactions. I think government has been able to reduce black money usage. Now, the message this government has clearly and loudly sent to the people who are using black money is that days of black money people are over. So I think policy level taxation reforms have been one big achievement of this government. Apart from that, if you talk about budget, the main target of budget has been rural growth, agriculture growth, lot of rural spend, lot of agri spend has been there, rural infrastructure, social objectives. So I think the past 4 years, main target, if you ask me, I would say it would be rural growth, agriculture growth, rural infrastructure spend.
Among the big changes brought about by NDA budgets, experts count the scrapping of Foreign Investment Promotion Board, which many observers have called as the single biggest bottleneck in FDI. E-filing of income tax returns is another step that has helped in improving ease of doing business in the country. Various budgetary measures of the NDA government have focused on tackling the issue of illegal wealth stashed in foreign banks. Other highlights and far-reaching measures announced by the budgets presented by Jaitley include the Smart City mission that was launched with the aim of building 100 model cities by 2019. The Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Development Yojana to develop the infrastructure in 500 towns and cities by 2020. The Shama Prasad Mukherjee National Rural Mission aimed at developing smart villages on the line of smart cities in order to stem the trend of migration. The Setu Bharatam project focused on making national highways free of railway crossings by 2019. Allocations have also been made to create an ecosystem to make flying affordable for masses. Under this policy, Udaan was launched to connect nearly 50 small cities in the country. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Tales that inspire. Stories of social change. A salute to diversity. Promoting public discourse. Events that motivate. Inspiring the innovative spirit. Watch Rajya Sabha television documentaries.
The Qutub complex in Mehrauli is not just a place that houses the eponymous Minar, but also a landmark that represents one's ruler's desire to build an even taller structure that could have overshadowed even the Qutub Minar. Alauddin Khilji, who called himself Sikandar-e-Sani or the Second Alexander, had commissioned the construction of Alai Minar. Though the work had begun on the structure opposite Qutub, due to death of Khilji, the construction was abandoned, never to be taken up by any other ruler. Even in its incomplete state, the magnitude of Alai Minar is awe-inspiring. It stands a lot wider at the base than Qutub Minar, and though just one story exists, it stands 80 feet, one-third the size of older counterpart. Probably the only unfinished monument in Delhi is a marvel to behold, for nothing induces more wonder than a strong first step with an illusion of how great things could have been.
Art arisen from a multi-hued cultural canvas. Tradition and cultural fervour dating back centuries. And encircling them all, there's a magic that awes. Embrace your nation's brilliant human warmth. Watch Colours of India, Sundays at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha Television.
Rabindranath Tagore was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for his book Gitanjali. In 1950, he composed the music and lyrics for India's national anthem Jana Gana Mana. And when Bangladesh became independent in 1971, they chose Tagore's song Amar Shonar Bangla as its national anthem. Tagore's life and works have made him a cultural icon, studied the world over, even into the 21st century.
Welcome back. You're watching In Depth on Rajya Sabha Television with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. Well, when Finance Minister Arun Jaitley presents the interim budget, not a lot can be expected in terms of direct taxes, etc. But given that various experts have called for cushioning for people against the continuing impact of decisions like demonetization and GST, a few surprises could be on the cards. Here's a detailed report. The budget for the financial year 2018-19 was the last regular budget of the Modi government, but the upcoming budget holds a great significance ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. Many pro-people announcements of benefits are expected to form part of it in the wake of the defeat faced by the ruling party in the recently held assembly elections. It may be noted that the interim budget will be presented in a joint parliament session. Since India's fiscal year ends on March 31st, this means that no money can be spent from the Consolidated Fund of India without obtaining parliamentary approval first. The interim budget includes a report card on the income and expenses made by the government last year and the proposed expenses likely to be made in the next few months until the new government takes over.
So this year what we can expect is, because as far as this present government is concerned, this is their last, I think they are on the in the last period. So I think what I expect is from this government or whatever government comes into power after the elections, there should be a lot of rural focus, and there is one more important area which I have been recommending and suggesting to the central government and all the state governments as well as the opposition parties, is that there should be a huge focus on employment generation. See, we have been growing fast, we have become bigger, but employment generation we have not that successful which we should have been. So I think whether this party or any other party, the focus should be, I can't say what it would be, but what it should be as an economist, I would say should be on agri growth, rural upliftment, and lot of focus and monetary allocation should be on employment generation, and particularly the manufacturing area, the small manufacturers, MSME area, that needs lot of focus and funds allocation.
The budget is expected to bring some relief to small and medium enterprises. The central government has been focused on MSMEs since GST was rolled out. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley recently termed the MSME sector as the backbone of the economy. He emphasized that this sector would lead the current consolidation phase of the economy. Recently, the government has also been vocal about job creation. The government believes that MSMEs are major employment generators, which is why focusing on MSMEs might impact job creation positively. Recently, Prime Minister Modi said that all possible measures have been taken by the government to boost employment in the country. Something which will boost job creation further can be expected from the interim budget. Though Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has said multiple times that farmer loan waiver is not a permanent solution, there are expectations that the government might announce farm loan interest waiver for farmers who crop loans on time. Lowering insurance premium and income support are some other expectations. The agrarian crisis will be a major focus for the government, and they are expected to take all measures possible to win over the angry farming community in the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in an interview recently that his government will continue to bring changes in the tax structure. He stated that there is still scope for improvement. The statement came after the GST Council decided to bring 23 items from 18% category to 12% and 5%. Jaitley also mentioned in December last year that 28% slab will soon be phased out except some luxury and sin goods. He further added that in the future there could be one single standard rate instead of two standard rates of 12 and 18%. The government might announce something regarding the GST structure in the interim budget. Assuming that voters will be extra sensitive to budget announcements, the government, like all other previous ones, may steer clear of any unpleasant announcements like the LTCG tax and the custom duty hikes announced last year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, that's it from me on this edition of In Depth, but we'll be back same time tomorrow with a focus on some other subject. You can also watch our episodes online on YouTube and also Twitter and get back to us with your feedback and suggestions. That's it from me. Thank you for watching.